Okay, so the first step for setting up our model is we want to create a layer called Inundation Zone. Essentially, we want to identify the land surfaces in and around Port Alberni that are vulnerable to inundation from a tsunami. So we've got two criteria listed. One, that the land surface be at or below 10 meters of elevation, and two, that the land be within 1 kilometer of a water body. So we've got four separate steps here that we've got to run. First, we're going to reclassify the DEM to just isolate the areas that are at or below 10 meters. Then we are going to convert that reclassified DEM from a raster to a polygon. So we're going to do a data type conversion. Then, separately, we're going to take the water bodies layer and we're going to buffer it by 1 kilometer. And then we're going to take the two vector layers that we have and intersect them to create an inundation zone. So I'm just going to walk you through how to create that now. So you can go to geoprocessing and just type in reclassify, and then click and drag the tool into the model space. And you'll see it show up symbolized with the model as a rounded rectangle and the output as more of an oval. If you click on reclassify, then you can specify the input parameters. And so we've only got one raster layer in our table of contents. So when you click the drop down, that will be the only one that shows up. And then we can type in our values. So we want our start value to be 0, our end value to be 10, and we'll give this a new value of 1. Then you click somewhere outside of that and a new row will show up. Type over that node data at the start value, set 11. And then at the end value, we want to just set some arbitrarily high value that's higher than any elevation in our DEM. So we can see that the highest value here is 464. But if you want this to be more foolproof, you could do something like typing in 9999. So that's higher than any elevation on Earth. So you would never run into an instance where this would fail. And then you can hit tab, click out of it, and you'll see another layer, no data, no data, no data popped up. And then it gives us a default output raster or reclass PAD1, and it's in the PA risk assessment. You can click OK. You can change the output names if you want to be more descriptive. This is just an intermediary step, so I'm not super worried about this one. Now, we will move on to the next step. We want to type raster to polygon in here, and you'll get the raster to polygon conversion tool. So you can drag this one into the model, put it next. So here you can again double click, and then for input raster you'll have two options because now we've got two models. So it will give you the option for the original input, which we don't want to choose. We want to choose the output of our reclassify, so that's the reclass PAD1. Reclass field is going to be value, and again we can just leave the output polygon feature name as the default. Make sure simplify polygons is checked. So what that's going to do is it's just going to smooth things out a little bit. And you can click OK. And you'll see that now we get a line that's drawn between this. So the advantage of Model Builder is that we can set up chains of operations that we can run all at once. And so now we need to do a separate process. We want to buffer the water bodies layer. So if you just type in buffer, it will come up. You can drag this tool into the window, double click buffer. Now for input features here, we're going to have a lot more options because there's multiple vector layers. But you just want to click water bodies. You can leave the output feature class as is, and then type in 1000. The linear unit should automatically change to meters, as I discussed in the buffer video earlier, but excuse me, make sure to set that if not. And so for the side type and the method, leave those as is. For the dissolve type, you can just click dissolve all outputs to single feature. Click OK, and you'll see that that sets up. And now, one last process to create this inundation layer. We want to do an intersect. So what an intersect does is it combines two layers and only keeps where they overlap. So it's going to combine the reclassified DEM and the water bodies layer, and it's only going to keep the areas that are both at or below 10 meters and within 10 kilometers of the coastline. So you can double click on this intersect. We'll specify the input features. And so it has the layers that are in our table of contents over on the left, but it also has the model values. So, or the variables that are just within the model. So we want the raster T reclass 1 and the water bodies buffer. Now this is not so much of an intermediary step because we want to look at this on the map, and it's an important layer. It's going to end up on our final map product. So we're going to rename this one, and we're going to call it Inundation Zone. And so with that, you can click OK, and you'll see that these things will all line up. Now, a nice thing you can do is you can click Auto Layout, and that will set your model up to a more sort of nice inline fashion. Another thing you should do is click Save As, and so you can just save your model as model. I have another one that's already titled Full Model because I've already created this, but you can just save it as model, or you can name it whatever you want. So you'll see if you look in your risk assessment folder in the catalog tab, you'll see this toolbox, PA risk assessment toolbox, and you'll see your models here. If you want to open up, if you close out, you leave ARC and you want to open your model back up, you just right click and click edit, and that will open your model for you. Now, these three steps are just intermediary outputs, so we're not too worried about them. But for Inundation Zone, we want to take a look at it. So we're going to right click and click Add to Display. So now you see that that's checked there. So now we can click Run. And what that's going to do is it's going to run these three processes in sequence. And then or these four processes in sequence. And then we can look at the resulting output. And so you see as it runs a process, it highlights each process in red. And then when it's done, you get a message that says done, and the inundation zone is added to your map. So you can go over to the map, you can look at it, and you can see, okay, so everything that's in light blue is vulnerable to flooding in the event of a tsunami. So yeah, that's how you create the inundation layer. I'll have another video for the next steps.